Ham it up.
I'm Jesus. I mean, Jason.
I'm Dan.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm the Homo Hillbilly.
I'm Brittni.
And I'm John. And this is 4-Letter Nerds. We are going to have a battle royale, and I think that we're basically split down the middle on this one.
This is where you watch all of us not be friends anymore.
The debate that we're having is Christopher Nolan versus Tim Burton on Batman.
Round 4.
Christopher Nolan's Batman isn't Batman. Like, Christopher Nolan's Batman is Christian Bale in a really high-tech suit. There's none of...
Swear to me!
Yeah, there's none of the campy aspects that you need to make Batman scary.
I disagree.
No, not at all.
You don't need campy.
Oh my god.
Yes, you do.
No.
Batman
God,
can be
no.
scary.
You need campy to have Adam West be Batman.
No,
you don't need
You need
campy.
campy to have Val Kilmer be Batman.
We all love the animated series.
Let me
That's
sum
hella
it down
campy.
like this then. Okay, Christopher Nolan's movies have terrible flaws. Tim Burton's movies have terrible flaws. The one thing that redeems Tim Burton's Batman is that it is campy, and so you don't have to take it seriously. Tim Burton is not trying to posit Batman as a real character in the real world. So when he has flaws in his movies, you're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
But I think that's the core of who Batman is that he is a man. He is supposed to be a man in a world, doing everything he can to defend justice and what he believes is
Remember
right.
that they based these movies off of graphic novels, off of comics. And I have to say that Tim Burton did a badass job of taking that graphic novel feel, which is campiness. Graphic novels are campy.
Which was, and his visual style was based specifically on The Dark Knight Returns.
Which isn't campy, really.
Which is not campy.
Yeah. It was
And that was the movie that was the movie that they wanted to make, and that was the movie he was trying to get them to make, but they wouldn't do it. And I like Tim Burton's Batman. I don't like Batman Returns. I think Batman Returns is not a Batman movie.
I love
Batman Returns.
I think Batman Returns
Yeah.
is a Tim Burton movie with Batman characters.
Why you say
This is Halloween. This is Halloween.
I'm Batman.
I would agree with that. It's about style with Tim Burton. It is always about style. It is always about a certain visual look, which you buy into every time you go see a Tim Burton movie. Where Batman has enough fucking story, and it is substantial enough that you do not need bright colors and creepy looking shit to sell Batman.
I'm Batman.
Because the Penguin was a shitty, cheesy villain.
Yeah, I liked Penguin.
Up until Tim Burton made it. And then now there are comic stories where the Penguin is a very sympathetic character. And I feel like that started with Batman Returns.
In Tim Burton movies, you're in another world.
I'm Batman.
You know, it has its own reality, but you become invested in that world. With the Christopher Nolan movies, I'm just kind of he's just another dude in a suit running around with plot holes.
I know Kung Fu. I'm Batman.
You guys can both eat my ass, okay?
And it's hard to care about that Bruce Wayne.
But
I don't give a shit about
No,
him.
I'm not trying to sell Christian Bale. What I'm saying is the stories
Please, somebody should.
that Christopher Nolan, the stories that Christopher Nolan told
I buy that.
are more true to the core of what Batman is. He made Two-Face not a campy character. To be fair, the way that Catwoman in the Tim Burton movie was good, but he made Catwoman
It was supernatural.
She was awesome.
Yeah.
She
But-
was
Better than
awesome.
But it was less of a
and
real world character. It was less
Yeah.
of something relatable.
Well, but Tim Burton's movies aren't real world movies. That's
Dude, what are
I'm
you talking
saying.
about? Have you seen Beetlejuice?
But, I mean, you can criticize the Tim Burton movies for not being real world, but you can't say, well, the character wasn't real world in his movies. He wasn't even trying to go for that.
I'm Batman.
Part of the issue is that Christopher Nolan wanted to start. This is as close to the real world as we can get, but you have to understand that he is still telling stories that exist in a comic book universe. And in comic book universes,
which he did amazing.
Yeah, he did an amazing job. In comic book universes, there are always going to be huge plot holes and huge that's not realistic, because that's what comics are. Comics aren't supposed to be realistic.
If you're trying to make it realistic, then you have to stick with realism. You can't have Catwoman jumping on the bat bike and being like, oh, I'm mistress of the goddamn spinny wheel, and all of a sudden, I'm magic and can... Oh my god, that scene just blew my mind. I was like, what?
The problem with me with Tim Burton's movies is they go against the foundation of what Batman was originally created to be, which is man finding a way to protect his brothers. which is to be the guardian of the people that he cares about and protecting a concept and an ideal that is justice and right. And the villains who came up around Batman in the stories were supposed to be mirrors or representations of him, but something a challenge he had to rise to meet. And in those movies, Batman was never rising to a challenge. Tim Burton's Batman.
He was the Batman of that time.
Was a superhero.
Yeah.
Batman is a hero who has a big bank account and is a brilliant motherfucker.
And dresses like a fucking bat.
That's why...
To be scary. He needs to scare people. That's the campiest shit I've ever heard of.
It's still based on a comic. It's still based on a comic.
That's
you can make it as real as you can.
That makes
but it's
more
still
sense.
based on a comic.
Okay, so the reason that I define Tim Burton's as better is because I remember those characters even 20 years later. I still love Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I still love Jack Nicholson as fucking the Joker.
But again, despite the fact that you're saying that you still remember Catwoman, you still remember the Jack Nicholson's the Joker, it's because you've had more time with them in your conscience.
Right,
I would say that Heath Ledger's Joker was much more of a stamp than Jack Nicholson.
Heath Ledger's was better acted, but he is not as memorable.
Who? Where? What? When? Why? How?
Like he's just.
I disagree.
I 100% disagree. What Tim Burton is trying to sell you is an Alice in Wonderland version of Batman. And you cannot talk about Batman movies without addressing the source material.
Like how in what ways?
He's not treating the characters in the way that they were in the comic.
Okay, so half of Batman's history is kapow. Even in the goddamn comics.
Which is Batman Forever or Batman and
Hold
Robin.
on. Tim Burton is addressing everything that happened before 1989, and the most of what happened before 1989 was the POW stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, he was.
And the golden age, the silver age of comics. It was in the 80s, in the mid 80s, in the late 80s when that started to change, and it started to change with the Dark Knight Returns. And that's why, like I said, he's basing it most on that. Well, everything since then, Chris Nolan's Batman is.
If you're going to try to tell me that Tim Burton is not trying to sell you a modern Joker,
wait till they get a load of me.
A modern Joker that's written in the comics from Killing Joke, from Dark Knight Rises.
It's totally not. The Joker. Yeah. You barely see Joker kill anyone in the Tim Burton movie.
But also, that's
and
not
killing
Heath Ledger either.
He's completely monstrous.
That's monstrous. That's not Heath Ledger either. I mean, Heath Ledger was way too based in realism, and the Joker in all of the graphic novels and all the comics is so acting like
larger.
I would disagree with that. I would disagree that stories like The Killing Joke portray the Joker as someone who can barely control himself.
Yeah, he's just someone who wants to create chaos for the sake of chaos.
In his own mind, trying to find a way to present something where Batman can barely overcome.
We're all saying kind of the same thing right now, which is that like Tim Burton's drawing on an earlier Batman, and then the pool of Batman that Christopher Nolan had to draw on was already saturated with the Frank Miller kind of vision of Batman.
And became more realistic after Batman. Batman owes his resurgence to Tim Burton. I mean, Tim Burton injected Batman back into
the mainstream.
Completely.
I disagree. I think Frank Miller did that.
Nobody was reading comics.
No.
Frank Miller,
comic nerds.
Frank Miller made it popular
Are
amongst
very
comic
small.
books.
I would disagree with that only because people paid money to go see the trailer for the Batman movie.
I didn't
before
have
it came out.
Batman
just
Converse.
to see the trailer, and then they walked out.
I didn't have Batman Converse because I read Batman comics.
That's the coolest fucking story I've ever heard in my entire life. That's insane. Can I hear it again? Do you have time?
I'm not saying that a Batman movie didn't help to bring Batman closer to the mainstream, but people cared a lot about Batman in the 80s and in the early 90s. They did. That's just a fact. They, like Dan just said, they would pay to go see a movie that they didn't want to see the trailer for Batman that they didn't know what it was about.
Tim Burton's Batman never made anyone fucking cry. Alright? Done. Argument over.
I never cried at Christopher Nolan's Batman.
Yeah, he made me cry when he touched me.
I would like to hear what John has.
Basically, what Tim Burton is selling you is...
You have diabetes. What are you doing?
And Allison...
I have diabetes.
What Tim Burton is selling... I fucking hate you.
Mother...